Welcome. You have entered a spooky universe where stories never sleep and shadows never fade. Let's blend your like and subscribe into Spooky Universe. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? I've always found that question fascinating because no matter where you are, when the lights go out and the night grows cold, the same darkness finds us all. Let the shadows rise and rule. I used to think the Canadian Rockies were honest. Big mountains, thin air, weather that did not pretend to be anything else. I liked that about them. Even when they frightened me, it felt like a clean kind of fear, a normal fear, the kind you can respect. Then I learned there is another kind of fear that lives up there too. Not the kind that chases you, the kind that follows you home, quiet as powder snow, and melts into your life when you are not looking. It started with my radio. I was driving a service truck for a small company that handled emergency call-outs for mountain lodges and backcountry cabins. It was not glamorous work, but it paid. Most nights it was simple. A frozen pipe, a generator that would not catch, a door that had warped in the cold and would not latch. Things that made sense. That night, the call came in just after the sun had gone down and the long shadow of the peaks had turned the valley into a bowl of ink. The lodge manager sounded tight and embarrassed, the way people sound when they are trying not to admit they are scared. "The repeater is acting up again," he said. "We cannot reach anyone on the ridge. The emergency phone keeps ringing, but there is no voice, just breathing. Can you come take a look?" The ridge he meant was above the tree line, where the wind scours the snow into hard sheets and the world goes quiet in a way that feels ancient. There was a repeater box up there, bolted to a steel frame, meant to bounce radio signals across the valley. It was the kind of equipment everyone forgot about until it failed. I told him I could come. I do not know why I agreed so easily. Maybe because I had been working too many calm nights and I missed feeling useful. Maybe because the mountains have a way of making you think you are tougher than you are until they prove you wrong. I loaded my kit, extra batteries, a small tool bag, and a coil of cable. I filled a thermos with coffee. I checked the weather and saw the usual warning about shifting conditions and high winds at higher elevation. Normal stuff. I headed west into the dark. The highway through the Rockies at night is its own kind of world. The road is clean and bright under your headlights, and everything beyond it is a wall of black trees and invisible rock. You can feel the mountains even when you cannot see them, like the air has weight. There were only a few vehicles on the road, a couple of semis dragging chains of red taillights through the snow mist. A car that passed me too fast and vanished into the dark like it was late for something important. Otherwise, it was just me and the steady sweep of my wipers and the hum of tires. I kept my radio on, tuned to the lodge frequency. Mostly it was quiet. Then I heard a sound that made my hands tighten on the wheel. Not a voice at first. A click. It reminded me of a microphone keying up, that sharp little pop you hear when someone presses the button to talk. The line stayed open. I heard nothing but a soft rush, like wind against fabric. I waited for the lodge manager to speak, or another staff member, or anyone. Instead, I heard breathing. Slow. Patient. Too close to the mic. My throat went dry. I reached for the radio and pressed my own talk button, mostly out of habit. "This is a service truck," I said. "Who is on the line?" The breathing stopped. For a moment there was nothing. Then a voice came through, very low, like it was being spoken from far away, even though it filled my cab. "Say your name," it said. I stared at the radio like it had grown a mouth. I know what you are thinking. It is just someone messing around. A staff member with a sense of humor. A bored guest. A prank. But the voice did not sound playful. It sounded like a request that had been made many times and never stopped being important. Say your name, it repeated. I swallowed. Lodge, I said, trying to keep my tone normal. This line is for emergency traffic only. Identify yourself. A faint crackle came through, like something shifting in snow. Then the voice said, "Say it, so I can carry it." I did not answer. I clicked my mic off and turned the volume down, but not all the way. I told myself I needed to stay aware, just in case this really was an emergency. A person lost on the ridge, someone cold and confused, someone trying to make contact. The road rose toward the pass, and the trees thinned into darker shapes against a darker sky. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the mountains were only suggested by the way the darkness stacked itself in layers. I passed a pullout where tourists usually stop in daylight to take pictures. At night, it was empty. The sign at the entrance leaned slightly, its reflective paint catching my headlights in a quick flash. I saw the words for a split second, and in that split second, I thought they had changed. Not the place name, something else, printed smaller below, like an added instruction. Do not give it what it asks for. I blinked, and it was gone. Just the normal sign, just my tired eyes. Still, I did not like it. I kept driving. The lodge road turned off the main highway and climbed through tighter forest. Snow piled along the edges. The beams of my headlights caught drifting flakes, and for a while it felt like driving through a slow, white swarm. When I reached the lodge, the parking lot lights were on. A few windows glowed. Everything looked peaceful, warm even, like a postcard. But the air felt wrong. Not dangerous, just watched. The manager met me at the entrance, bundled up, face red from cold. He tried to smile, but it did not land. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Sorry to drag you out." "No problem," I said. "Show me the repeater log and the emergency phone." He led me inside. The lobby was empty, with that quiet you get after a long day when the guests have gone to their rooms and the staff are moving softly, trying not to break the calm. A fire crackled behind glass. The smell of wood smoke and cleaning products hung in the air. The manager took me to a back office where the emergency phone sat on a small desk. It was an old-style unit with a handset and a row of indicator lights. As we walked in, the phone rang, sharp and sudden in the quiet. The manager flinched. He looked at me like he was embarrassed by his own reaction. "See?" he said. "Like that." He did not reach for it. Neither did I at first. I watched the phone ring, and something in me tightened, the way it does when you feel a pattern forming and you do not want to step into it. Finally, I picked up. "Hello?" I said. Silence. Then the sound of breathing. I held the receiver tighter. "Who is this?" I asked. The breathing slowed, deepened. Then a voice, faint and low, like it was coming through a long tunnel. "Say your name." A chill crawled up my neck. "This is not funny," I said. "If you need help, tell me where you are." A pause, and then the voice said, "I know where you are." "I need to know who you are." I felt my jaw clench. I glanced at the manager. He was pale under the lodge lights. I set the receiver down without answering and let the phone keep ringing until it stopped on its own. The manager exhaled like he had been holding his breath. "You hear it now," he said. I nodded. "Who else has heard this?" I asked. He rubbed his hands together, restless. "A couple of staff. It started after that storm, the one that buried the ridge road. We had to close the upper cabins. After the storm, the radio got weird. The phone started ringing. Sometimes the call comes in and there is no one. Sometimes it asks for a name. Sometimes it just breathes." I looked at the manager and tried to judge if he believed what he was saying. He did. That was the problem. "Show me the repeater access," I said. He hesitated. "You are going up there? Tonight?" I shrugged like it was nothing. Better now than later. If the repeater is glitching, it might be water in a connection, ice in the housing. I can check it. He did not look relieved. He looked guilty, like he was letting me walk into something he did not fully understand. He gave me the key for the service gate and the code for the ridge cabin where the repeater box was mounted nearby. There was a maintenance track that climbed toward the ridge, but in winter it was half buried and often drifted shut. I would have to park where the plow stopped and hike the rest. I have done hikes like that in darkness before. They are not pleasant, but they are manageable. This one felt different before I even started. When I stepped back outside, the night air hit my face like cold water. The stars were gone behind cloud. The lodge lights made the falling snow look like ash. I opened my truck door and the radio clicked on, even though I had turned it down. A faint rustle came through, then breathing. I stared at the radio. Then the voice said, "Bring the key. Bring the name." I reached over and turned the radio off fully. The cab went quiet, except for my own breathing, which suddenly felt too loud. I drove up the maintenance road as far as I could. The plowed section ended at a wide turnaround where a snowcat sometimes parked in daylight. Beyond that, the road narrowed into a white path between dark trees. I parked, strapped on my pack, and started walking. The beam of my headlamp cut a narrow tunnel through the snowfall. My boots crunched in the packed snow. The trees rose on either side, black trunks with snow clinging to branches. At first, it was just a hike. Cold, quiet. The sort of quiet that makes you aware of your own thoughts. But the higher I went, the quieter it got in a way that did not feel natural. No wind in the branches, no distant traffic, no animal movement. Just my footsteps, steady and alone. Then I noticed something that made me slow down. My footsteps had an echo. Not the normal echo you get from rock walls, because I was still in the trees. This was different. A second set of crunches, half a beat behind mine, like someone was walking just out of sight. I stopped. The echo stopped. I held still and listened, headlamp beam fixed on the snow ahead. Nothing. I took a step. The second crunch came behind mine, perfectly matched. My skin prickled. I forced myself to breathe slow, to think it through. Sound can do strange things in cold air. Snow can make weird acoustics. Trees can funnel noise. I took another step. Crunch. Crunch. My mouth went dry. I swung my headlamp beam to the side, scanning between trunks. No one. I kept walking, but slower. Crunch. Crunch. It followed me like a shadow. As I climbed, the trees started to thin. The path broke out into a slope dotted with stunted firs, and beyond that, open ground that rose toward the ridge. The wind hit there, sudden and sharp. It carried fine snow that stung my face. I pulled my hood tighter and kept going. Above me, the ridge cabin sat as a darker shape against the sky. A small structure meant for maintenance crews, simple and solid. It should have felt like a goal. Instead, it felt like a mouth. As I approached, my headlamp beam caught something on the snow. Footprints. Not mine. They came from the cabin area and led down the slope toward me, then stopped. As if whoever made them had stood there and waited, then turned around and walked back up. The footprints were fresh. The edges were crisp. My chest tightened. The manager had said the ridge road was closed. No staff should be up here. No guests either. I tried the simple explanation first. A ranger. A ski patrol member. Someone else is checking the equipment. But the footprints were wrong. The stride was too even, too careful. Like the person had placed their feet deliberately, matching a pattern rather than walking naturally. And the footprints were shallow, as if the person was not putting weight into the snow. I followed them up to the cabin. The cabin door had a padlock. It hung open. Not broken, just open. The metal had a thin layer of frost on it, like it had been exposed for a while. I stared at that open lock and felt something in my stomach drop. I told myself I could turn back. I could go down and tell the manager someone had been up here and the cabin had been accessed. I could ask for a ranger escort. I could do the smart thing. Instead, I stepped forward and pushed the door open. Inside, the cabin smelled like cold wood and old propane. My headlamp beam swept across a small table, a bench, a wall rack with a few tools. And on the table, dead center, was the emergency phone handset. Not attached to a base, just the handset, like someone had carried it up here and set it down gently. I stared at it and felt my mouth go dry again. I stepped closer. The handset was cold, rimed with frost. Beside it lay a small notebook, the kind crews use to log maintenance. It was open. The last entry was written in neat block letters. I am holding your voice. Below that, another line. Say your name. My throat tightened. I reached out, then stopped myself. Touching it felt like accepting it. Behind me, outside the cabin, the crunch echo came again. Not behind my footsteps now. Just one crunch, like a person shifting their weight in snow. I turned fast, headlamp beams swinging. The doorway was empty. But beyond it, in the storm dark, I saw a reflective glint. Not a sign, not equipment. A strip of something catching my headlamp beam and throwing it back. Like reflective tape. My breath caught. A figure stood outside, just beyond the doorway light. Not close enough for me to see details, but close enough to know it was a person shape. They did not move. They did not raise a hand. They did not speak. They just stood there, steady as a post. The wind blew snow through the doorway, and the figure did not shift. I forced my voice to work. "Who is that?" I called. No answer. The figure stepped sideways, very slowly, into a darker patch of storm. Then it was gone. Not running, not rushing, just no longer there. The cabin felt smaller suddenly. I swallowed, forcing myself to focus on why I came. The repeater box was outside, mounted on a steel frame with antennas. I told myself if I fixed it quickly, I could get out. I stepped back outside. The wind hit my face again, sharp and cold. My headlamp beam shook slightly with my breathing. The repeater frame stood a short distance from the cabin, half buried in snowdrift. The metal looked black and wet. The antennas rose into the dark like fingers. I walked to it and opened the housing. My gloves fumbled with the latch. I kept glancing over my shoulder. Inside, the components looked normal at first glance. No obvious ice buildup, no broken connections. I checked the power. The indicator light was on, steady. Then the radio in my pack crackled. I froze. I had turned my truck radio off, but I carried a handheld for work. I had forgotten it was on. The handheld hissed. Then a voice came through, low and familiar. Say your name. My breath fogged in front of my face. I grabbed the handheld and pressed the button, mostly to stop the incoming voice. This is Service Tech on the Ridge, I said. Identify yourself. If you are up here, show yourself. A pause. Then the voice said, I am already on you. The words hit like a shove. My heart thudded hard. I looked around, scanning the slope, the cabin, the dark beyond the headlamp beam. Snow whipped through the light like a swarm. No movement. Then I saw something that made my stomach clench. The footprints I had followed up were changing. Snow was filling them, yes, but not evenly. The impressions were smoothing out, the edges blurring in a way that looked like the snow itself was rearranging, like something was pressing from underneath. A new set of prints appeared beside the old ones, forming slowly, as if someone invisible was stepping into the snow and leaving a mark without ever being seen. They moved toward me. One print, then another. Slow, deliberate. My body went cold. I backed toward the cabin, headlamp beam locked on the forming prints. The handheld hissed again. Say your name, the voice repeated, closer now, like it was coming from the air itself rather than the speaker. I shook my head hard, like I could shake the sound out of my skull. No, I said out loud, and my voice sounded small under the wind. No. The prince stopped. For a moment, everything held still except the storm. Then the cabin door behind me creaked. I turned. The door was moving inward, slowly, as if pushed by a hand. The wind could do that, sure. A guest could catch it. But the movement was too controlled, too gentle. The door opened wider. In the doorway, the darkness looked thicker than the storm, like a solid thing. My headlamp beam hit that dark and seemed to dim, as if the light was being swallowed. And from inside the cabin, from the place I had just been standing, I heard breathing. Deep, close, patient. I did not think anymore. I ran. I ran down the slope, boots punching into snow, packs bouncing hard against my back. The headlamp beam bobbed wildly. Branches whipped at my sleeves as I hit the thinner trees. The wind howled behind me like it was laughing. And through it all, the crunch echo followed. Not behind me now, beside me, in front of me. Like the mountain was walking with me, matching my pace without ever showing itself. My chest burned. My throat tasted like metal. I stumbled once, caught myself, kept going. The maintenance road appeared below, a pale strip between dark trunks. I hit it and followed it downhill toward my truck. I could see the faint shape of the vehicle through the trees, a dark lump with a light dusting of snow. I reached it, hands shaking, and yanked the driver door open. Inside, the cab was cold. The radio was on. Static hissed softly. My heart lurched. I had turned it off. I slammed the door, locked it, and started the engine. The truck coughed, then caught. Heat began to push into the vents, slow and weak. The radio volume knob turned on its own. Not fast, not dramatic. Slowly, smoothly, like a hand rotating it. The hiss grew louder. Then the voice came through the speakers, calm and close. "Say your name." My hands clamped the wheels so hard my knuckles ached. I stared straight ahead, out the windshield at the dark road. "No," I whispered. The voice did not get angry. It sounded almost amused. "You carried it up," it said. "You brought it into the high place. Now I can hear you better." I forced myself to breathe. I reached out and ripped the radio power cord from under the dash, a crude move that made the speakers pop. Silence filled the cab. For a second, relief washed through me. Then I realized the breathing had not stopped. It was not coming from the speakers anymore. It was coming from the back seat. I turned my head slowly, dreading pulling at my ribs. The back seat was empty. But the breathing continued, as if an invisible face hovered inches behind my shoulder. My skin crawled. I shoved the truck into gear and drove. The tires crunched over packed snow. The truck rocked slightly on the rutted road. Trees rushed by in my headlights, black and close. I did not look in the mirror. I did not want to see something sitting there, smiling quietly, wearing the shape of a person the way a coat wears a hanger. I drove down to the lodge as fast as I could without sliding. The road felt longer than it had on the way up, like the mountain did not want to let me go. When the lodge lights finally appeared, I exhaled the shaky breath I had been holding too long. I pulled into the lot and left the engine running. I did not want the cab to go quiet again. The manager came out, with worry on his face. "You were up there fast," he said. "Did you fix it?" I stared at him for a moment, trying to decide how much to say. I did not want to sound crazy, but I also did not want him to send another person up there. "The cabin was open," I said. "Someone has been up there. And the repeater is not a simple glitch. You need to call the park office. Get a ranger to check it." The manager's face tightened. "Did you see someone?" I hesitated, then nodded. I saw a figure, and there was... I swallowed. There was something wrong with the phone. He looked away, jaw clenched, like he had known and hoped I would not confirm it. He leaned closer, voice low. "Did it ask you?" My stomach twisted. "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "Did you answer?" "No," I said. His shoulders dropped like he had been carrying a heavy load. "Good," he murmured. "Good." I stared at him. "Do you know about this?" His eyes flicked to the dark tree line beyond the lodge lights. "I know enough," he said. "Enough to tell you not to answer. Enough to tell you it gets worse if you do." "What is it?" I asked. He shook his head. "People call it different things. Echo, repeater ghost, the voice in the ridge. But it was here before the equipment. It uses the equipment now because it makes it easier. It likes names. It likes being spoken to. I felt a cold pressure behind my eyes. "So what happens if you answer?" He swallowed. "Then it knows how to call you back." Those words stayed with me in a way that felt physical, like something cold settling in my stomach. Call you back. Not on the phone, in the world. I should have left right then. I should have driven straight out of the valley and not stopped until daylight and distance made me feel human again. But I was stubborn, and part of me still wanted the world to make sense. I told the manager I needed to check something in my truck, and I went back to the cab. I grabbed my handheld radio and pulled the battery. I stared at the silent device in my palm, then stuffed it deep into my bag, like burying it could keep it quiet. When I looked up, the lodge parking lot felt too still. The manager had gone back inside. The lodge lights glowed warm, but the darkness beyond them felt heavier than before. I drove away. As I followed the road back toward the main highway, I kept expecting to hear that voice again. In my vents, in my head, in the static of a dead radio. Nothing came. For a while, I started to believe it was over. The highway opened ahead, a ribbon of dark between mountain walls. The snow eased. The sky lightened slightly, not with dawn, but with a thinning cloud that let a faint wash of starlight through. I drove with my shoulders slowly unclenching. Then I saw a figure on the shoulder. A person standing near a pull-out sign, facing the road. They wore a jacket with reflective strips. My grip tightened again. As I passed, my headlights washed over them, and the reflective strips flared bright. The person did not raise an arm, did not try to flag me down. They just turned their heads slightly, tracking my truck. In the instant my lights hit their face, my brain could not settle on what it saw. A blur, a depth, like staring into a dark tunnel and trying to find a face in it. Then I was past, and the shoulder was empty in my mirror. I told myself it was a worker, a ranger. Someone else is out at night for a reason. But my body did not believe that, and my body was right. A few minutes later, my phone screen lit up on the passenger seat. No signal bars, no notification, just a blank white screen with text that formed slowly, like someone typing with patience. "Say your name." My mouth went dry. I did not touch it. I did not even breathe for a moment. The text vanished. The screen went dark. I drove harder. The highway curved along a river that I could hear faintly in the darkness, a low, constant rush under ice. The mountains loomed on either side, invisible but present, like shoulders pressing in. I tried to distract myself by naming things I could see. Guardrail, reflective post, snowbank, rock wall. I kept my mind busy the way you do when you are trying not to think about something standing just outside your field of view. Then, as the road climbed again, I saw a set of taillights ahead, a vehicle moving slower than me. Relief hit, quick and bright. Another driver meant normal life, another set of eyes, another warm cab cutting through the dark. I closed the distance carefully. The taillights were steady, but the vehicle did not look right. It was too narrow, too tall. As I got closer, I realized it was not a vehicle at all. It was a row of reflector posts moving down the road, spaced like taillights. And between them, barely visible, a figure walked in the lane, placing them as they went. My breath caught hard. The figure's reflective strips flashed each time my headlights hit them. They moved slowly, deliberately, like marking the road for something that would come later. I eased off the gas, heart hammering. The figure stopped. Then, without turning fully, they lifted a hand and made a small beckoning motion. "Come closer." My skin went cold. I did not. I held my distance. The figure's head tilted slightly, like it was listening to my engine. Then a voice spoke, not through any speaker, but through the windshield glass, through the sealed cab, like the sound was already inside. "Say your name." I shook my head hard. "No," I said. "No." The figure's hand lowered. They reached down to the road, picked up one of the reflector posts, and held it upright. My headlights hit its reflective band and flared so bright I had to squint. On the band, written in black marker, were words that made my stomach drop. "I can carry it if you give it." I stared, heartbeat loud in my ears. The figure set the post down again, exactly in line with the others. Then they stepped off the road and into the dark. Not into the ditch, into the darkness itself, like it had depth and could accept them. The row of posts remained, bright and wrong. I made a decision that did not feel like a choice. I kept driving. I aimed my truck between the posts, careful not to clip one. As I passed through, my headlights swept the shoulder where the figure had gone. For a split second, I saw them standing among the trees, not facing me, facing the forest, like they were listening to something deeper in the mountains. Then my lights moved on, and they vanished again. After that, the road opened, and the posts behind me returned to normal spacing, normal rhythm. I drove until I reached a larger town with more lights and more traffic, and for a while, the fear loosened its grip. I stopped at a gas station under bright canopy lights. I went inside and bought coffee I barely tasted. The clerk looked normal. The shelves looked normal. The hum of the coolers sounded normal. I almost believed I had left it behind. Then I noticed a small sign taped to the counter near the register. "Do not say it on the mountain." I stared at the sign, then at the clerk. The clerk met my eyes and gave a look that was not friendly or curious. It was tiring. It was a warning. "You were up high tonight," the clerk said softly. My mouth went dry. I did not answer. The clerk nodded, like my silence was enough. "It likes to ride the repeaters," they said. "It likes to take the shortest path. You bring it down when you carry the question with you." I swallowed. "How do I get rid of it?" The clerk's expression tightened. "You do not feed it," they said. "You do not answer. You do not repeat the question back to yourself either. You let it starve." I stared at them. Does it ever starve? The clerk looked past me toward the windows, toward the dark mountains beyond the town lights. "Not completely," they said, "but it gets quieter. It loses interest. It goes back up where it belongs." I wanted to believe that. I drove home after that, and for a couple of days nothing happened. My radios stayed silent. My phone stayed normal. My dreams were uneasy but not full of that voice. I started to tell myself the clerk was right. I started to breathe easier. Then, late one night, I was lying in bed scrolling through videos with the sound low, trying to wind down. The audio on my phone hiccuped for a fraction of a second. Just a tiny glitch. And in that glitch, under the normal sound, I heard breathing. My stomach went cold. The video continued like nothing happened. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling, listening. The room was quiet. The house was quiet. Then, from the hallway outside my bedroom, I heard a soft click. The kind of click you hear when a handheld radio keys up. I held my breath. Another click. Then a voice, very low, coming from nowhere and everywhere, as if the walls themselves were speaking. Say your name. My skin prickled all over. I sat up slowly and looked toward the bedroom door. The hallway was dark. No light, no shape. But I could feel something standing there, patient as a mountain, waiting for me to do the simplest thing in the world. To answer. To make a sound that belonged to me. Have you ever felt that, listening right now? That a question is not just a question, but a hook. That the wrong answer could pull you somewhere you do not want to go. I swallowed and forced my voice to stay steady, even though it shook. No, I said. You do not get that. The hallway stayed dark. The breathing continued for a long moment, like the thing on the other side of the door was considering me, weighing whether I was worth the effort. Then the breathing faded. Not like someone walking away, like a radio signal drifting out of range. I did not sleep much after that. Days turned into weeks, and the voice came less often. Sometimes I would hear it in the static of a distant station when I drove through mountain valleys. Sometimes my phone would flicker with a blank screen for a heartbeat, then return to normal. Sometimes I would wake from a dream where I was walking on snow and hearing my own footsteps echo beside me. Always the same. Request. Say your name. And I never did. I thought that meant I was winning, in the only way you can win against something like that. Then winter deepened, and another call-out came in. A different lodge, farther north, higher up. A simple job, they said. A heater fault, a frozen line. Normal. I told myself I could handle it. I told myself the voice had faded. I told myself the mountains did not own me. I drove into the Rockies again under a sky full of bruised clouds. Snow drifted in the wind. The peaks rose like dark teeth behind the tree line. As I climbed, my phone lost signal, as it always does. And then, without warning, it lit up. The screen showed my own contact card, my name displayed in clean letters. Under it, a call timer began to count, though there was no service, no bars, no way for a call to connect. The phone rang. Not out loud, in my hand, through vibration, like a heartbeat. I stared at it, frozen. On the screen, beneath my own name, a message appeared. I can call you back now. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat like it was alive. The ringing stopped. Silence filled the cab, thick and cold. Then, through the vents, a whisper slid into the warm air. You climbed again, it said. You came back to the high place. My hands shook on the wheel. I kept driving, eyes fixed on the road. The whisper continued, almost gentle. All I need is the sound that belongs to you. Say it. Say your name. The road ahead narrowed between rock walls. Snowbanks rose high on either side. My headlights carved a tunnel through the storm. I realized with a sick clarity that the mountains had never been trying to chase me. They were waiting for me to return. They were patient because stone is patient, because peaks do not hurry, because they have all the time in the world. And I had brought myself back, like a moth returning to a porch light it knows will burn. I tightened my grip and spoke aloud, not to answer it, but to remind myself I was still me. I am not giving you that, I said. I am not yours. The whisper did not laugh. It did not threaten. It only breathed, slow and close, like it was right behind my ear. Then it said something that made my blood run cold. "If you do not say it, I will learn it from the way you run." My throat tightened. The words felt wrong, like a promise. And then I understood what it meant. It did not need me to speak my name into a microphone. It could take it from any place I left it. A signature on a receipt, a voicemail greeting, a work badge, a note on a dashboard. Anything that carried the shape of who I was. The mountain did not need my permission anymore. It only needed time. I drove the rest of the way with my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I did the job at the lodge in a bright mechanical room where the hum of machinery made me feel safer. I did not talk more than I had to. I kept my eyes away from the windows. When I left, I did not take the mountain road back. I took the longer route through lower valleys, through places with more lights and more people. I told myself that would help. But here is the part that stays with me, and it is why I am telling you this now. When I finally got home, I found something on my front step. A small reflector post, like the kind that lines a mountain highway. It stood upright in the snow by my door, perfectly placed. On its reflective band, written in neat block letters, were words that made my stomach twist. "I do not need the mountain anymore. I have your road now." I stared at it for a long time, breath fogging, the world suddenly too quiet. Then, behind me, far down the street, I heard a soft click. The sound of a microphone keying up. I turned slowly. There was no one there. Just the empty street, the dark houses, the cold air. And somewhere in that quiet, riding on nothing at all, a voice breathed my name without speaking it. Not as a word, as a feeling, as certainty. So if you ever drive through the Canadian Rockies at night, if you ever pass those silent slopes and those dark ridges where antennas reach into cloud, remember this. Some questions are not meant to be answered. Some voices are not meant to be acknowledged. And if you hear something on the line asking you to say who you are, if you feel that hook tugging at your throat, ask yourself, right then, with the mountains watching and the road unfolding ahead, do you really want to give the dark a way to call you back? The first time the Canadian Rockies asked me for my location, it did it politely. It did not roar or shake the mountainside or throw a blizzard at my windshield. It did not even raise its voice. It simply waited until I was alone, high enough that the air felt thin and sharp, and then it slipped a question into the quiet the way snow slips into your boot. Where are you right now? And what time is it for you? I know how that sounds, like a campfire line, like something you would hear in a spooky intro before the story really starts. But I am telling you straight, that question did not come from a person. It came from the place itself. The same way a valley can hold a sound and throw it back at you seconds later, changed. And the worst part is that it took me a while to understand why it was asking. I drive mountain routes for work, the kind that makes you learn the difference between normal darkness and mountain darkness. In the city, night is a blanket. Up there, night is deep. It feels like the world has opened its mouth and you are driving through it on a thin line of light. Most nights, I am fine. I keep my speed easy, my eyes moving, my mind busy with the small rituals that keep you steady. Wipers, defrost, thermos, music low enough that I can hear my tires. That night, I was not fine. That night, I was tired in a dangerous way. The kind of tiredness that makes you confident. The kind where you tell yourself you could do the drive with your eyes closed, and then you blink too long and the road seems to tilt. I had a call from a friend who managed a backcountry lodge on the edge of a big national park. Not one of the famous resorts with 1,000 lights. This was a quieter place, the kind that survives on hikers in summer and snowshoers in winter, and on the stubborn pride of the people who keep it running. He said their weather station had gone dead. No wind readings, no temperature, no signal. And the park office was already stretched thin with closures and slide warnings, and a road crew that could not get equipment up the pass until morning. I should have told him to wait. Instead, I said I would check it. It sounded simple. A box bolted to a post near a ridge service cabin. A short hike from a plowed access road. Pop it open, reseat a connection, swap a battery if needed, come back down. Simple is a word the mountains love. They use it like bait. I left town after dark. The highway climbed and the lights thinned. The last gas station was open, bright enough to make the surrounding trees look like a wall. I fueled up, grabbed a coffee, and made a joke to the clerk about the weather. The clerk did not laugh. He stared at me for a moment, then nodded at the handheld radio clipped to my jacket. "Keep that off unless you need it," he said. I assumed he meant battery life. I said sure, and walked out. The drive into the park felt familiar at first. Snowbanks, black pines, the pale shine of road reflectors blinking past like sleepy eyes. Then the road rises into a long section where the rock walls close in and the trees drop away, and you can feel the mountain pressing near, even if you cannot see it. That was where my truck speakers clicked. I had my phone plugged in for music. The song faded, like the signal had been pinched. The speakers hissed softly. Not static, not really. More like the sound of air pushed through a narrow gap. Then a voice came through, calm as a dispatcher. "State your location and time." I frowned and tapped my screen, thinking my playlist had glitched into some radio app. The voice continued. "Your location and time, please." There was a strange tone behind it. Not urgent, not angry. Expectant. Like the question had been asked many times and always got answered. I turned the volume down. The voice did not get quieter. It was no longer in the speakers. It was in the cab, sitting in the air, as if the dashboard itself had learned to speak. "State your location and time." My mouth went dry. I said nothing. I kept driving. The road curved, and the rock walls opened again into a stretch of forest. The pressure eased slightly, like stepping out of a narrow hallway. The voice stopped. I laughed once, just a breath. I told myself it was fatigue, a weird auditory trick. Maybe I had dozed and dreamed for a second. That happens. People do not like admitting it, but it happens. I promised myself I would stop at the next pullout, walk around, get my head right. The next pullout arrived, but something about it made my stomach tighten. The sign was there, reflective and normal, but the letters looked freshly scraped, like someone had gouged the face of it with a tool. The place name was hard to read. Below it, where there should have been nothing, was a line of smaller text that did not match the usual style. It read like a polite instruction. "Tell us where you are." I rolled past without stopping. The road continued to climb. Snow began to fall harder, the flakes bright in my headlights, thick enough to make the world feel close. I reached the turnoff for the lodge access, a narrower road with fewer reflectors, the kind that makes you grip the wheel tighter without realizing. I followed it through the trees, and after a while, the lodge lights appeared like a small ship on a dark sea. My friend was waiting outside, hood up, shoulders hunched against the cold. He looked relieved when he saw me, but the relief did not last. "You came quick," he said. I asked for the key to the service cabin and the last known coordinates of the weather station. He hesitated, like he wanted to say something else. Then he asked a question that made the hair on my arms lift. "Did it ask you on the way in?" I stared at him. He rubbed his gloved hands together. "The park office said it was probably interference," he said. "But it has been happening to staff. Radios keying up on their own, phone lines with breathing, and always the same question." I forced a small shrug. "I heard something," I admitted. "Just once." My friend's face tightened. "Do not answer it," he said. I almost smiled, because it sounded like superstition, like a story you tell to scare new seasonal workers. But his eyes were steady. He believed what he was saying. He had that mountain look people get when they have seen weather turn and nearly not made it back. "Why would I answer some random voice?" I said, trying to sound lighter than I felt. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Because it sounds like it belongs," he said. "Because it sounds official. Because when you are alone and tired, you will want to prove you are real by speaking." That sentence sat in my chest like a stone. He handed me the key and a small map with the route marked. The weather station was up a short service road that was plowed part way, then a hike to the ridge. He offered to come with me, but he could not leave the lodge that night. Guests were in, staff were short. Storm warnings had everyone tense. So I went alone. I drove the service road until the plow line ended, parked, and stepped out into the cold that felt clean and sharp. The lodge lights behind me were already dim through the trees. Ahead, the mountain rose into darkness. My headlamp beam made a narrow tunnel. Snow squeaked under my boots. The air smelled like pine and frozen rock. I started up the track, and at first it felt normal. Hard work, but normal. Breathing in cold air that bites your throat, listening to your own steps, watching your breath bloom white. Then I noticed a second set of sounds. Not footsteps exactly, more like a soft crunch in the snow. Always just after mine, always on the edge of my hearing, like an echo that should not exist in a forest. I stopped. The sound stopped. I stood still, headlamp beam fixed on the pale path ahead, and listened until my ears filled with the hush of falling snow. Nothing. I took one step. Crunch. Then another crunch just behind it. My skin tightened. I turned sharply, swinging the headlamp beam through the trees. Empty. I kept walking, slower now, trying not to let my breathing speed up. The crunch followed, steady and patient, as if something was walking with perfect discipline, never closing the distance, never falling behind. The trees thinned as I climbed. The slope opened into a wind-swept stretch where snow blew across the ground in thin sheets. The headlamp beam caught it and turned it into glittering dust. Up ahead, the service cabin appeared, a dark rectangle against a darker sky. A simple structure, meant to shelter workers and equipment. It should have made me feel safer. Instead, it felt like a place that had been waiting. The padlock on the cabin door hung open. Not broken, not forced. Just open, as if someone had unlocked it and forgotten to close it. My mouth went dry. I told myself my friend could have left it that way by accident, or a crew earlier, or a ranger. But there were no fresh tracks around the door, only the smooth wind brushed the surface of the snow. I stepped closer, and my headlamp beam caught something on the cabin wall. A strip of reflective tape. Not the normal safety tape. This was old, cracked, and it threw back light too brightly, like an animal eye. The tape had writing on it, black marker, neat and careful. Location and time. I swallowed, my throat suddenly tight. I pulled the door open. Inside, the cabin was cold and still. The air smelled like old wood and stale propane. My headlamp beam swept across a bench, a small table, and a rack of tools. On the table sat a handheld radio. I froze. It was not mine. It was not the Lodge model either. Different casing, different shapes. But it was on the table like it belonged there, like someone had placed it carefully and left. The radio speaker hissed softly, even though the unit looked like it was turned off. Then the radio clicked, and a voice came through, the same calm tone I had heard in my truck. "State your location and time." I stared at the radio, heart hammering. The sound was too clear, too close. No mountain interference does that. No random signal speaks like it knows you are standing in the room. I did not answer. The voice continued, patient. "You climbed into the high place. We need your location and time." The words made my stomach twist. It implied a group, a network, something spread out across the mountains, listening. I backed away from the table, keeping my headlamp beam on the radio as if light could pin it down. The radio clicked again. "If you do not answer," the voice said, "we will have to find you another way." The cabin felt smaller. The cold felt heavier. Outside, the wind gusted. Snow hissed against the cabin walls. And beneath the wind, I heard that crunch again. Not behind me on the trail now, right outside the cabin door. One slow step in the snow, then another. Someone was there. I swung my headlamp beam toward the doorway. The open door framed a slice of storm dark, and for a moment I saw nothing. Then the reflective tape flashed. A figure stood just outside, half hidden by blowing snow. The shape was human enough, but the light did not land on it properly. The beam seemed to bend around the body, leaving the center of it darker than it should have been. The figure did not move. It did not raise a hand. It simply waited, like a signpost. The radio on the table spoke again, and the voice was softer now, almost gentle. "Tell us where you are." I took a step backward, and my boot bumped the bench. The sound was loud in the small cabin, and the figure outside tilted its head slightly, as if listening to the shape of my fear. I forced myself to move. I turned away from the door and stepped back outside, not toward the figure, but toward the weather station frame where I could see through the blowing snow. If I could just fix the station, I told myself, I could leave. I could get back below the ridge. Back to the lodge lights. Back to normal questions that do not feel like traps. I reached the weather station post and opened the panel. My gloves fumbled. The wind shoved at my sleeves. Snow blew into my headlamp beam, making everything flicker. The components looked fine. The battery was seated. The connections were tight. But the display was blank. I leaned closer, squinting. There was a thin film over the screen, like frost. I wiped it gently with my glove. The blank screen flickered, and for a moment, Words formed on it in dim segments. Location and time. I jerked my hand back like I had touched something hot. Behind me, the crunch came again. Closer. One step. Another. I turned my head slowly, not wanting to, but unable not to. The figure was no longer at the cabin door. It was halfway between the cabin and me. It moved without hurry, as if distance meant nothing. Reflective tape ran down its arms and across its chest, cracked and old. It flashed each time my headlamp beam hit it. Where there should have been a face, the storm dark seemed deeper, like looking into the mouth of a tunnel. The radio inside the cabin clicked, and the voice came through the wind, clear as if it were spoken beside my ear. State your location and time. My heart slammed. I backed away from the weather station, boots sliding slightly on hard snow. The figure continued forward, slow and steady. Then it stopped. It raised a hand and pointed past me, down the slope, toward the trail. And in that gesture there was something that felt like instruction. Go ahead, it seemed to say. Run. Show us where you belong. I ran. I do not like saying that because it sounds dramatic, but it is the truth. I ran down the trail in the dark, headlamp beam bouncing, breath tearing at my throat. The wind roared around my ears. Snow slapped my cheeks. The crunch followed me, but not behind me. Beside me, in front of me, like the mountain was walking too. I hit the tree line and the wind eased, but the dark got thicker. The headlamp beam became my whole world. My boots punched into the snow. Branches scraped my sleeves. I kept waiting to feel a hand grab my shoulder. Nothing touched me. That was almost worse. It was like being chased by a sound. When I reached my truck, I fumbled the keys so badly I dropped them in the snow. I found them by scraping my glove through the powder until metal flashed in my headlamp beam. I got the door open, threw myself inside, and locked it. The cab felt like a bubble. A fragile little warm space surrounded by forest and dark. I started the engine. The dashboard lights came on. The clock blinked for a moment, then went blank. In its place, words appeared on the display in bright, simple letters. Location and time. My stomach dropped. The heater vents breathed cold air, despite the engine warming. Then a voice spoke in the cab. Not from the speakers, not from the radio. From the air itself, as if the truck had become a mouth. We can keep you safe if you tell us, it said. Location and time. I swallowed hard and stared through the windshield at the pale road ahead. Snow fell steadily, soft and relentless. In the beam of my headlights, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Reflective tape. A strip of it hung from a branch just beyond the hood, swaying slightly in the falling snow. It flashed brightly when my headlights hit it, as if it had been placed there on purpose, as if someone had marked my truck. The voice continued, patient. This is how we log you. This is how we keep you. Location and time. Have you ever had the sense that a simple answer could change the shape of your life? That a harmless detail, spoken aloud, could become a door you cannot close again? My hands shook on the steering wheel. I forced my voice out through a throat that felt tight with cold and fear. No, I said. You do not need that from me. The words sounded small in the cab. The voice paused, like it was considering. Then the dashboard display changed. It showed a set of numbers for a split second, like coordinates, like the kind you see on a GPS. Then the numbers blurred and smeared, as if the screen was trying to hold them but could not. And I understood something with a sick certainty. It did not need me because it was lost. It needed me because it wanted to place me. To pin me down in the mountains the way you pin a location on a map. To make me a dot it could return to whenever it wanted. I shoved the truck into gear and drove. The service road was narrow and rough, and I took it too fast, but I did not care. The tires slid slightly on hard snow, and the truck fishtailed, and I corrected with hands. It felt numb. I got back to the lodge access road, then to the main highway, and the moment my tires hit the broader plowed lane, I felt a tiny easing in my chest, like stepping into a lit room after a dark hallway. The lodge lights faded behind me. The highway stretched ahead, black and glossy, reflectors blinking. The voice did not speak for a while. I drove in silence, breathing hard, trying to tell myself I was safe. Then my phone lit up on the passenger seat. No signal, no bars, just a bright screen, white background, black text that appeared slowly, like a message being typed. Where are you right now? I did not touch it. Another line appeared under it. What time is it for you? My mouth went dry. I grabbed the phone and threw it into the back seat without looking. The screen glow flashed against the rear window, then went dark. A moment later, the truck speakers clicked. Not music, not radio. A clean tone, like a call connecting. Then the voice returned, softer than before, almost kind. You are leaving the ridge, it said. That is good. We can still log you down here. Location and time. I kept my eyes on the road and did not answer. The highway climbed into another canyon section, rock walls closing in. The darkness pressed closer. On the shoulder ahead, I saw a reflective shape. A person standing near a pull-out sign. Reflective tape across their chest and arms. They stood perfectly still, facing the road, as if waiting to direct traffic. My heart was hammered. As my headlights hit them, the tape flared bright, and for a split second, I saw the center of the figure. There was no detail, no face, just depth, like staring into a shadow that goes back too far. I drove past without slowing. In the mirror, the pullout was empty. No person, no reflective flash, just snow and darkness. The voice in the speakers breathed softly, as if pleased. You see us now, it said. That helps. Location and time. I clenched my jaw. The canyon opened into a broader valley, and in the distance, I saw the lights of a small roadside complex. A gas station, a motel, a closed diner with a dark sign. The kind of place that exists purely because roads need places to rest. I pulled in because I needed light and people, even if the people were just silhouettes moving behind glass. The gas station canopy lights were harsh and white. They made the snow look like drifting dust. A couple of vehicles sat at pumps, engines idling. A trucker leaned against his door, smoking, shoulders hunched. Normal. I parked near the entrance and sat for a moment, breathing, listening. No voice, no clicking. Only the normal hum of the engine and the faint buzz of the canopy lights. I stepped out and walked inside. Warm air hit my face. The smell of coffee and fryer oil. The sound of a cooler compressor. The clerk behind the counter glanced up. He looked tired, mid-shift tired, the kind of tired that makes your face feel flat. I asked for a coffee and tried to smile. The clerk poured it, then slid the cup over without looking me in the eye. When he finally did look up, his gaze went past me for a moment, to the door, to the darkness beyond. "Did you hear it up high?" he asked quietly. My stomach tightened. I did not answer immediately. The clerk nodded anyway, like my silence was confirmation. "Everyone hears it eventually," he said. "They think it is a radio net, a park dispatcher, a safety line." "What is it?" I asked, and my voice sounded rough. The clerk leaned closer, lowering his voice. "It is a ledger," he said. "It is not a person. It is a way the mountains keep track of what passes through them." That made no sense, but it also made a terrible kind of sense. Mountains keep their own records. Avalanches record storms. Tree lines record cold years. Ice records centuries. The clerk continued. "It wants you to speak yourself into its book," he said. "A place and a time. Something that pins you. Then it can find you again whenever it wants. Then you are part of the route." I stared at him. "How do you stop it?" The clerk's expression tightened. "You do not answer," he said. "And you do not repeat the question to yourself. You do not think it over like you are solving a puzzle, because it can use your attention too." I swallowed. "Has anyone answered?" The clerk looked away. "Yeah," he said softly. "Some do. Usually the tired ones, the polite ones, the ones who want to be helpful." He took a breath. "Sometimes you hear them later," he added, "on the radio, on a dead line, saying the same thing over and over. Their location, their time, like they are still trying to help, like they never got to finish the call." My hands went cold around the coffee cup. Outside, a vehicle door slammed. The clerk flinched, then steadied himself. "Do not linger," he said. "Keep your route. Stay with other cars if you can. Light helps. People help. Not because they fight it, because they make it harder for it to pretend it is official." I nodded, throat tight. I paid and walked out. Back in my truck, the cab felt smaller again. I started the engine, and for a moment everything was normal. Then the dashboard display blinked. Location and time. I stared at it, fury rising under the fear. Like the mountains were not just hunting me, but nagging me. I reached down and unplugged the entire console fuse panel, a dumb move that made warning lights flare, but I did not care. I wanted the screen dark. I wanted it to shut up. The display went black. Silence. I pulled out and merged back onto the highway. For a while, it worked. No voice, no clicking, no text. I began to believe I had starved it, even for the night. Then the storm eased, and the sky cleared enough that the peaks became faint shapes against a field of stars. The moon slid out from behind clouds, and suddenly the Rockies were visible, huge and pale and sharp-edged, like a row of sleeping giants. It was beautiful. And the moment I let myself feel that beauty, the voice returned. Not in the truck, in my head, soft as a thought. "There you are," it said. "Now tell us. Location and time." I shook my head hard, as if I could dislodge the words. The highway curved along a frozen river. In the moonlight, the ice looked like a sheet of metal. I passed a bridge and felt the truck bump lightly on the expansion joints. On the far side of the bridge was a sign. A normal roadside sign, reflective, simple. But as my headlights swept across it, I saw a fresh black marker on the lower edge, like someone had written on it recently. It said, "Do not say it aloud." I stared at it as I passed, heart hammering. The message felt like a hand reaching through the dark to grab my sleeve. The voice in my head softened, almost amused. "Someone else told you that," it said. "Good. They are learning." I felt sick. The mountains were not just speaking to me. They were speaking through other people too, leaving notes, planting warnings like trail markers. I drove until the valley widened into a section where the highway ran straight for a long time. Nothing but snowfields and scattered dark trees. The moonlight made everything look flat and unreal. Ahead, I saw taillights. A vehicle moving slow, steady. Relief hit me so hard I almost laughed. Another driver. Another set of eyes. A witness. I closed the distance carefully. Then I realized something was wrong. The taillights were not attached to a vehicle. They were a line of reflective posts, the kind used in construction, set down in the lane in a perfect row. Each post caught my headlights and glowed red at the top, like taillights. And between the posts, walking slowly, was the figure with reflective tape. It moved as if it owned the road. It stopped when it heard my engine. It turned its head slightly. The tape on its chest flashed. The air in my cab went cold. The voice spoke, not from speakers, not from my head, but from the road itself, as if the asphalt was vibrating with sound. "Now," it said. "Location and time." The figure lifted one of the reflective posts and held it up like a sign. In black marker on the post was the same instruction, written neat and careful. "Answer and stay." My breath caught. The figure set the post down gently, exactly in line with the others, as if marking a boundary. I could not stop. If I stopped, I knew I would be alone in that moonlit stretch, with that thing and those silent posts. And I would start bargaining with myself. I would start thinking I could answer just a little. Just a general area. Just an hour. Just enough to make it go away. And that is how traps work. I gripped the wheel and drove forward. The posts stood like teeth. The lane narrowed, not physically, but in the way my mind felt it narrowing. The white lines on the road seemed closer. The dark on either side seemed deeper. The mountains seemed to lean in, listening. As I drove between the posts, my headlights swept the figure. For a split second, the center of it was not a person at all. It was hollow. A dark space that seemed to go back and back, as if the figure was. Only a reflective outline hung on emptiness. Then I was past it. In my mirror, the posts were gone. The road behind me was clean and empty. No construction, no markers, no figure. Just black highway under moonlight. My chest heaved, my hands shook. The voice in my head returned, softer now, almost pleased. "Good," it said. "You understand. Now tell us, location and time." I felt something in me harden. Not courage, but stubbornness. The kind you get when you realize the thing wants one simple act from you, and you can deny it out of spite. I spoke out loud into the cab, voice shaking but clear. "You do not get to log me," I said. "You do not get to keep me." The air went still, as if the mountains were listening closely. Then the voice replied, gentle as snow. "Everyone passes through," it said. everyone gets recorded. Not if I do not give it to you, I said. A pause. Then, very softly, the voice said, "We can take it anyway." My mouth went dry. Take it how? The answer came like a cold breath on my neck. From your receipts, from your screens, from your calendars, from the way you tell someone you are almost there. I felt a surge of panic. It was right. My life was full of small logs, tiny pins I dropped without thinking. Messages, check-in, photos with location tags, maps, calls. The mountains did not need my voice on the radio if it could get my location and time from the way I lived. That thought made me feel exposed in a way cold never had. I drove faster, just to feel like I could outrun an idea. Eventually, the highway dropped lower. Trees thickened. The peaks became less jagged, more like dark shoulders under the stars. I reached a larger town with real streetlights and real traffic. I pulled into a bright parking lot and sat with the engine running, breathing slowly. The voice was quiet. For the first time that night, I felt like I had gotten beyond it. I drove home and slept with the porch light on, like a kid. In the morning, the world looked ordinary. Sun on snow, blue sky. The kind of crisp day that makes you believe in safety. I told myself I had imagined everything, that tiredness and mountains had made a story in my head. I even laughed about it once, alone in my kitchen. Then I checked my phone. There was a new note in my calendar. No notification for who added it. No account name. No shared invite. Just a title, scheduled for that night. Location and time. I stared at it, stomach sinking. I deleted it. It came back. I deleted it again. It came back again, slightly different, as if adjusting its tone. Please confirm location and time. I shut my phone off and set it face down on the table like it was a live thing. That evening, my friend from the lodge called. He sounded tired. "The weather station is back," he said. I frowned. I did not fix it. "I know," he said. "It just came back, on its own." I swallowed. "Does anything else happen?" He hesitated. Then he said, "The radio net was busy last night." "How busy?" He took a breath. "Somebody answered," he said. My skin prickled. "Who?" A pause. Then my friend said my name. My chest went cold. "That is not possible," I whispered. He continued, voice tight. "It was your voice," he said. "On the lodge channel. Calm, clear, giving a location, giving time. Over and over, like you were reading it from a screen." I could not speak. My friend's voice softened. "You never said it to me," he said. "You never said it to the radio. But it found you anyway." I stared at my kitchen wall, heart hammering. "How?" I managed. He exhaled. "It can take it from the edges," he said. "From the things you touch. From the way you almost answered. From the way you thought about answering." When the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. That night, I did not turn on any screens. I did not play any music. I did not check the weather. I sat on my couch and listened to my house settle, the small creaks and pops of wood. Around midnight, the power flickered. Not a full outage, just a blink. The room went dim, then bright again. And in that blink, I heard a click. A radio mic keying up. The sound came from my hallway. I held my breath. Then the voice came, not loud, not angry, just calm and close. "State your location and time." I stayed still, heart pounding. The voice waited. Then it spoke again, softer. "We already have it," it said. "We just need you to confirm." My throat tightened. The idea of confirming felt worse than answering from scratch, like signing a document you did not read. "No," I whispered. The voice paused, as if it was listening to the shape of that word. Then it said something that made my stomach drop. "If you will not confirm, we will send someone to read it back to you." The hallway felt suddenly deeper, darker, like the shadows had gained weight. I stared toward the doorway of my living room. Nothing moved, but I could feel a presence out there, not inside my home, but right at the edge of it, as if the mountains had pressed their face to my window and were breathing fog onto the glass. I did not sleep. In the morning, there was a strip of reflective tape on my front step. Cracked, old, the kind that throws back light too brightly. On it, in a neat marker, were 2 lines. "Location and time confirmed." My hands shook as I peeled it up. The tape came away easily, like it wanted to be taken, like it wanted to be handled. I threw it in the trash and took the trash out immediately. I drove to work with the radio off. I drove with my phone in the glove box. I did everything I could to avoid leaving little pins of myself behind. For days, nothing happened. The silence almost convinced me it was over. Then a new storm rolled in, the kind that makes the world quiet and white and close. The kind that makes the mountains disappear into clouds and makes you feel like the whole world has been erased and redrawn. That night, my friend called again, voice urgent. "The lodge emergency line is ringing," he said. No voice, just breathing. And then it asked for location and time. He swallowed. "It said it had you logged. It said it was going to send you back." "Send me back where?" I whispered. "Up high," he said, "where it keeps the ledger." I felt a cold spread through my chest. I looked out my window at the dark street, at the falling snow, at the way the street light made it look like ash drifting down. Then I saw something that made my breath catch. On the far end of my street, near the corner where the road turned, a reflective shape flashed. Not a car, not a sign. A strip of tape moving slightly, as if attached to a sleeve. A figure stood under the streetlight, facing my house. It did not wave. It did not step forward. It simply waited, patient as a mountain, as if it knew time was on its side. The streetlight buzzed. The figure's reflective tape flared bright, and in that flash, I had the sick sense of looking into a hollow. The same depth I had seen on the ridge, the same emptiness wearing a human outline. My throat tightened. The voice, calm and close, slid into my thoughts like a familiar tune. "Now," it said, "confirm." I backed away from the window, heart hammering, and in the silence of my living room, I realized the truth I had been avoiding. It was never only the Rockies. The Rockies were just where it learned my pattern, just where it first asked politely. And if you are listening to this right now, wherever you are, whatever time it is for you, let me ask you something that I wish someone had asked me before I drove up into that cold, dark ridge. How many times a day do you casually give away your location and time? How often do you pin yourself without thinking? Because once something learns the shape of that answer, once it learns the habit of it, it does not need a mountain radio or a dead weather station to ask again. It can ask through your screens. through your calendar, through the quiet moment when you are alone and tired and you want to prove you are real by speaking. And if you ever hear that calm voice, official and patient, asking you for your location and time, do not answer it. Do not confirm it. Do not even argue. Just keep moving. Because the Rockies taught me this, and I learned it too late. Some places do not want your fear. They want your coordinates. They want your moment. They want a way to return to you, exactly where you were, exactly when you were weakest, and hold you there like a dot on a map that never gets to move again. This was a spooky universe. If this story follows you into the dark, tap like, subscribe, and stay with us for more nights like this. Sleep carefully tonight, and remember, the story is over, but the shadows are still here, waiting for the next time you press play.